Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. And here we are again. You have no idea of the profundity of the moment and for who is here. And for what reasons? For I look deep into the Akash and I see the real you. I don't see the gender you are now. I don't see your name as your friends know it. I don't see the face that your mother knows. It may be a stretch of the imagination to think that this is truly a message from beyond. But old souls know. You might say that you were bred for this. You might say you rehearsed for this, and you'd be right. Carried in a way that is still unbelievable to your science, even to those who think in a linear fashion, carried in the quantum portions of your DNA. Your life's lesson, your purpose, your angelic name, your higher self, all that you have ever done, including the biology that you've experienced. It's all in your DNA. And I see it. If this is your first time in my presence, I hope you understand what you're seeing. I hope you understand who I am. For I am the family that you know better than anyone on the planet. I am the representation of that which is God, which is you. When you're not here, I am the majority. I am the love of God. I am the last entity and energy you felt before you came in. I am the first one you're going to see when you return to me. And there are those in the room who have a little bit of energy awareness, who can just barely peek there and know what I am speaking of, and the rest of you just have to believe it. Is it possible? Could it be that there's a plan here? Is it possible? Could it be that this meeting on the cusp of the 2012 alignment, could it be that eons ago you had an appointment to sit in the chair? Could that be possible? Not predestination, but potentials. Not predestination, but something that might be predisposed to happen, something that you might put together yourself, but it would require a plan, intent, and something that pushes you to be here beyond your own consciousness. And what would that be? And I will tell you what it is. There is a plan here. And every single one of you who sits in the chair had intent before you came in to awaken. Old souls don't necessarily awaken every single lifetime. Many of you never did. The old soul portion of you rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And it's called earth. Practicing motherhood, practicing fatherhood, practicing war, practicing dying. I want to tell you, there are 18 people in this room who were stillborns. Fastest turnaround possible. And you know why you went through that? To bring compassion to your mother. Of the stillborns in the room, you passed over. 6 of you, your mother joined you. That was to create compassion in your father. And you came back, and some of you did it again. And you knew it when you came in. Old souls start to understand the plan and the process, the procedure, the purpose, the reason. There was no guarantee that this decision point in the 26,000-year alignment would bring you into this that you have now. There was no guarantee that you'd sit here today. And if you could see the potentials and the what-ifs, if you could see the code of the potentials, it would astonish you that you ever made it. Generations ago, when you were someone else, the plan was still there. That perhaps, just perhaps, there would be an awakening in time. And then there was. And here you sit. Let what happens in the next hours, what you would call the days, in this room, be forever. Let what happens here in this room and the energy that is created by you with these around you be more than significant. Let it be life-changing. The old souls who sit in front of me here are vastly different from each other. Some of you have the wisdom of the ages, and yet you barely know what to ask for. Others of you feel that you've been on the path long enough to know exactly what to ask for. And in between, there's every difficulty you can imagine in the room. I know the secrets that are carried here. And all are blessed. There are no secrets from your higher self. All of the fears that you carry, we know of them all. And so I want to revisit something grand for you. And then I would like to extend it. There was a channel given, not a long one, very recently. That talked about how humanity was planned. It talked about a benevolent God that knows who you are and asks you to examine some facts. And so I'm going to review that and then go beyond. So it starts like this. Human being, how do you think you got here? And if you ask a scientist and the anthropologists, they will give you all that they know, but even their facts don't add up. They don't add up to what you would expect with nature, because nature appears to have an evolutionary process which is random. Survival of the fittest creates those who would be here now, and you've heard it all. Let's start even before that. I have given you the premise before that you and I stood and watched this planet in the process of its growth. And if you can remember with me, and I wish you could, I'll fill you in. Billions of years. We watched this planet of yours in a volatile situation. Mountains crashing into mountains, seas colliding with seas. And not over millions of years in real time. Some of the most amazing things that you think took forever to do happened in a day. That is how volatile your planet was, and there was no life upon it. When would it ever cool down? When would it ever be beautiful and serene and ready for humanity? If you take a look at the metaphor of the clock, and the creation of the planet and the appearance of life all came in 24 hours, the human being came in the last second. That's the metaphor. Now, I want you to think about that. There's been life on this planet for millions of years. There have been enormous mammals with complex heart systems and brains, nervous systems, even some to rival your own in their survival millions of years before you came. Now, why weren't you here? Now that is not random. That's a plan. Oh, let's even go before that. Let's talk about the creation of the solar system, the planets around you, all of your galaxies, over 100 billion of them just within your own view. Let's talk about that for a moment. Astronomers have looked into space and made a revelation only recently. This comes from your science and not from this chair. And the revelation was this, that the universe obviously did not happen by accident. There had to be a plan. Did you know that? They call it intelligent design. And this is from science. And they have plotted the probabilities of the universe ending up the way it does and did and is as being astronomically out of sync with probability. In other words, the odds are amazingly against what you see. If you had any idea how many planets had life, the universe is built for life. It won't take them long to discover the planets that have life, and they will be microbial. But they will see the truth that the universe was built for life. Built for it. Not an accident. And what happened here on the planet was absolutely natural and planned. Took a while to start it. In review, there were a number of stops and starts. Ask those anthropologists about that. They have evidence. Life came and went. 3, 4 times that they know of. It's more like 7 or 8. Had to restart again. It was a little too soon. And it always did. It always did. And for those who would say it's a miracle of miracles that life ever happened here, they're wrong. It would have continued and continued and continued until it actually developed that which it needed, which was a balance which we call photosynthesis. And now it could grow. And it did. The humans still aren't here. When the dinosaurs were trotting around on the planet, there was still upheavals. You still had asteroids striking the planet even then. Even then. For the asteroid belt, which contains the solar system's debris from its formation, had not settled down yet and still intersected the orbits of Earth. Wherever the Earth was, winter, summer, was an invitation for that debris to hit it. And it did. And it did. Over and over and over. Millions of years went by until all of those orbits settled down and they didn't intersect yours anymore. We were waiting. And humans could have developed any time, and they didn't. They didn't. Now that's not random, is it? Don't you find it interesting that only about 500,000 years ago or so did it all begin? And even then, the earth wasn't ready. I will say this to you. It's been less than 100,000 years since the Pleiadians looked upon this place and said, it is so, and ready. And even those seeds took 50,000 of the 100 and another 20 before all the different kinds of human beings settled to one, you. And that is against all evolutionary logic. And we have said this before. In review, isn't it interesting there's only one kind of human mammal, and yet all of the others have a variety that is deep with richness. So many kind of elk and deer, mammal, all kinds, primates, and there's only one of you. Only one kind. And that is designed. And that is where that channel left off. Showing you that even the science have notated that against all odds you showed up at a perfect time. That against all odds the universe was made for life. They see a plan. They even call it intelligent. What do you call it? There are still those, even those in the chair, who think they arrived randomly, wondering about life, why you seem to be bounced around, not really understanding even why you're here. They teach in the schools of the earth randomness, that evolution follows not a plan but a system. And the system is random. It is biased for survival, and that's the only bias it has. There is no mention of a benevolent, loving God which cooked this dinner until it was ready. And then served the food with love, because the food was the human being that is the family of God. And put you upon a serene earth that is not volatile, where there are not 1,000,000 erupting volcanoes to cover the planet with soot and darken the sun. That was then, and this is now. And here you are, to accomplish the test at hand. And the biggest test at hand you sit in, old soul, the one you expected. And so now we move forward to the next revelation. What is happening? What is next? And I don't mean the events. I would talk about awareness now. As you become aware that there is a plan, you have to ask, is there more in the plan? And there is. You might say that based upon human consciousness and the interaction of you and the crystalline grid, you are designing a plan of evolution. You're not finished. The human being never was. Isn't it interesting how science teaches you all about how things evolve? The plants and the animals, the species. And then they get to the human being and they say, well, this is static. It never changes. Interesting. There's no credibility, is there, for a human being that evolves? And how would the human being evolve? And this is why they don't see it. Not yet. Consciousness. That is to say, what the human beings want for themselves on the planet. So much has changed, So much is in process of changing. There are so many linear questions about what humanity is going to do, filled with fear and filled with a static, unbiased belief that humans are not very smart. And they ask the question, if the population continues to increase at an exponential level, humans will simply wipe themselves out because there's going to be too many. And they project the numbers to show when that's going to happen, when you're going to starve, so get ready for it. And there is no conscious effort to even consider that humans might wake up and recognize this. They might see it. They may change. And you already have. Take a look at the birth rate in first world countries and tell me you haven't noticed something. Some actually are going down. How is that possible? A consciousness, a coming of a consciousness that looks at things differently. There were those who would say, well, it's never going to happen that way because religion wants membership. Their birth rate is going down too. Something is overcoming even that desire to follow the doctrine. Common sense, you might say. Economics, you might say. Whatever it is, take a look. The anthropologists are looking, and so are the social scientists. They are looking, and they are seeing things they didn't expect. There's a plan here. You're reaching a crescendo where you're going to remain. Dear ones, that was not always the case. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? The crescendo might have been one of fire. And you know what I'm talking about. Fire of your own making, foolishness, hate, low consciousness, the things that terminated you all those other times would just come right back and do it again. Unless something changed, and it did. And my partner pegged it earlier. It's more than a shift. It's a revolution. It starts with the old souls. And it's almost like it's contagious. And that is what we are telling you about the quantum energies that you are developing, you are calling love. It's contagious. And others want it. There is now suddenly the desire among regular human beings to wake up and see drama in their lives as something they don't want and can control. And it wasn't that long ago when they would wake up and say, this is the plight of the human being, this is what we do, we can't help it, this is our suffering. And now they are looking at it and going, wait a minute, maybe, just maybe, we have a choice. You know this. You're sitting in the chairs. You made your choice. And that's why you're sitting here. I want to stop. Not for long. I just want to stop and tell you there's an entourage that has gathered here for the last 15 minutes. And some of you have felt it warming up. This is the entourage that's going to be here until the lights are turned off on Sunday night. And I want to tell you who's here. This is difficult, for you want to think in a linear fashion. You want to think singularity. I would tell you that there are those you've loved and lost who are standing here, and I'd be right. And they are. But they're more than that. They carry with them the seeds of a soul that's been here many times like yours. It's just not parents and children. It's their old soul attributes as well. They're here to greet you because they are your ancestors as well as your parents and your grandparents. And they have an awareness that I do. That core part of them that is on my side of the veil is allowed to be here in this room, even though some of them are back in a body. Now that is truly quantum. How can they be in two places at the same time? And the answer is the same way you can and are. There is a piece of you on the other side of the veil now. You had to know that. Because now we get into what's next. We've stopped in order to love you. To take the hands that are out now. The decisions you make today may very well be the ones that you came for. Time to recognize there's something bigger inside. What's next? There will slowly become an awareness of what I would call quantum Gaia. So I will just reveal a few things for you to think about. What did the ancients tell you, the indigenous who walked here, about the earth? And if you read their writings and you look at their protocols and what they believed that the earth was the mother and the father, that it involved the sky and the dirt, even that which they called north, east, south, and west. They even gave credibility to the directions, which is and will be always the magnetic grid. They knew of the relationship of the spirituality of the human being and the dirt of the earth, and there was no separation. Subsequent to their lives, you've wasted no time separating them. And today you sit in an area, even in your universities, where you have a building for earth science and a building for humanity and a building for biology, separating them. You get different degrees for them, and they never come together. And this is not how it was designed. So there's first going to be a revelation that Gaia is in you and you are in her. A return to what the ancients knew and taught and lived. And in that, you're going to start a revelation of your ability to work in what you call your reality and your manifestation, and suddenly you're going to see it's related to the earth. Let me give you some examples of some things that we said over 10 years ago that some read and said it is too strange, way too strange. I said to you that the air is alive. Some of you remember that. There's interdimensional life in air. And this would indicate that there's a tremendous amount of life that you don't recognize, because it is not what you would then qualify as life. Life has to be corporeal, starting with the microbes right up to the human being and beyond. And then you started giving some attributes of life, and you had to change it several times, especially when you saw what life did at the bottom of the ocean without sunlight or even oxygen. And you had to rewrite it. But it always had a physical attribute to it. No one ever said, and oh, by the way, there's interdimensional creatures in the air. We did. Now let's go back to the ancients for a moment and see what they believed. In Sanskrit, there's a word that means vital life, and it's called prana. And if you take a look at what they did with prana, the first thing they did was breathe it. And if you can go back and see the consciousness of what they were doing, whether they understood it or not, there was the acknowledgement that life is in the air, it is part of you, and you're to take it in, and it's vital. And there it is. Again, could it be that the ancients knew more than you do? And the answer is, oh, yes. But remember, old soul, you were the ancients. Therefore, you know what you're doing. It's only a matter of remembering. And that is the invitation. So now we are speaking of something even more difficult to explain. Remembering that which is a quantum energy that is part of the field of that human being that you call yourself, and it just vibrates with everything you ever knew. And as you stay in 3D, it's a mystery. And as you start to give intent for that which is beyond that which we would call your survival mode, you start to look into a multi-dimensional place. And then you start to have intuition. You're not going to see things written on the wall. You're not going to have them appear in the sky. You're not going to have them whispered in your ear. You know how they're going to come to you? Intuition. And many of you are just going to pass them right by. And you're going to think they're foolishness. You're going to think you made it up. You may not even whisper what you're thinking. And that is the process that we wish to talk about now. The involvement of the human being's attitude toward intuition will be one where they start giving it more credibility, look for it, watch for it, start to recognize it even before it comes, actually pause and listen to it. You can get good at this. And when you do, you will start remembering what is vital. It goes beyond that. How many of you have picked up a book on fairies lately? Well, these are the little ones in the garden, aren't they? What about entities in the trees, whatever you would call them? Now let us discuss that for a moment. There are those who would say, like my partner, who sits in the chair before you now and doesn't know what I'm going to say, who would say, yes, I channel Kryon. Yes, I believe in past lives, colors, auras, the Pleiadians, the creation story from ETs. I believe all these things, but not fairies. Well, he's going to have the same revelation you are. Do they exist? Let's discuss it. Not the way you see them. In a linear, three-dimensional world, there has to be a process to interpret a multi-dimensional energy that appears before you. Do you understand this? You might call it interpolation. The simplest way I can describe it is that when multi-dimensional energy appears in your three-dimensional world, your brain scrambles to figure it out. And so therefore it will singularize it, create an entity with a name that represents it and an energy. And that often there is a fairy. So fairies are fairies in 3D. But if you look at them multidimensionally, they are the love of God and part of you and the planet. They are the crystalline grid. They are the sun, the moon. They are Mother and Father God. All coming from a beautiful place in nature, in the woods, in the forests, in those places that are untouched, right where you think they would be, in the portals that represent the planet. And you've seen them. You can even photograph them. Now, how is that possible, Kryon? Stop for a moment. If it's an interpolation of our mind, how does it get on the camera? Because that's what you want to see, dear ones, and you put it right there in the camera. And that's how good your consciousness is. So there's going to be a revelation. you're going to see more books on fairies. You can call them what you want to. But I want to tell you, it's bigger than that. You're going to start seeing Gaia energy, and it's going to be beautiful. And you're going to start to understand that every single time you see it and experience it, it, like us, has its hand out to you, saying, come with me, and integrate into a system that you're going to rediscover. There'll come a day when you will open these ceremonies not with the Kryon prayer, but the Gaia prayer. When you give intent for all that is to be you. When you give intent to join with all of the energies that represent the love of God, including the benevolence that created you, and the earth that you walk upon, and the crystalline that you affect, because you will know you're part of it all. Right now, you know it, but you don't do it. And when you get to that step, you'll be just like your ancestors. Time to move forward. There's another one. Now we shift gears. And we'll make this the last one. There is a supreme awakening that is taking place even among scientists, that the human body must have a quantum complement. Years ago, experiments show that DNA has an effect on quantum particles. DNA cannot be a quantum particle. It's too big. The molecule is enormous. It is not a quantum particle like light, or like that which you cannot see and have never identified, that is in magnetism, which you will, or that which explains gravity. Not a particle, not a wave, something you haven't seen yet, which I'll call an influence. The DNA molecule is a biological molecule. It's enormous. And your science, which likes to separate, quantify, put things in boxes, call it this or this, has looked at a molecule in biology and said it cannot be this because it's too big. And suddenly they're starting to say, yes, but it seems to affect the particles that are quantum. Now, how will you then identify the attributes of this biological molecule called DNA? It's a modifier. Somehow it talks and sends messages and actually changes the quantum spin of atomic structure. This is science. I haven't even got to the metaphysics yet. What does it mean? It means you're going to be able to start to understand and see if this is true, and even if science is starting to see it, what does it mean you can do? You're going to start awakening, finally, to innate. Innate. The definition of innate is body intelligence. Body intelligence is that which the body knows and you don't. How about time to integrate them so that you know what it knows? And when you do, you'll just be like the ancients. Because that's what the Lemurians could do, and now you know why they lived so long. You ever hear about all of those biblical characters living for hundreds of years? Guess what? They did. They knew it too. They could sense it. You never even think about this, do you? You live such short lives and you think that's just the way it is. You congratulate yourselves because you're living 80 years and your ancestors lived 50. Pat yourself on the back, walk away having no idea you had about 600 more if you want them. If you want them. But you can't get them walking around in 3D. You have to begin to integrate. What if you knew what innate knew? What if you could sense when unbalance was there and could do something about it? And you can't. You go through all manner of processes to find out what the body's doing. Does that make sense to you? It's your body. You have no idea what's going on inside. Every single human in the room, including my partner, looks at parts of their body, their foot, their ankles. They can imagine what's going on in their livers and their kidneys and their hearts, and they just hope they'll last. There's not a consciousness that says, well, they're part of me, let's work with them a bit. And how about this? Why are you always working with a part? What is that about? Is that like an engine? Where you look upon it and say, this does this, I'll tweak this a little? What is wrong with you? Maybe it's time for you to look inside and cooperate with you. That's your cellular structure in there. Every single piece of DNA is identical. 100 trillion pieces of it. In every single human body, it all is alike. Therefore, your heart is you. It's not a part in an engine that's you. Why don't you ask it and work with it? Do you give credibility for your heart to have intelligence? It does. So do all your muscles. Innate is the intelligence of the human body. Undescribable. It's not a centralization, three-dimensional, compartmentalized brain that happens in a certain part of your body. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in your sore toe. We used to say, talk to yourselves. Now we're going to change that. We're going to say, have a good time with yourselves. We're going to say, why don't you speak to each other? Let them talk back. Don't have it a one-way conversation anymore. That is coming. It's available. And you're going to start seeing it. This is going to take place from a conceptual human being, not a linear one. These are the ones being born now. Old souls, because they have the ancient knowledge inside of them, can pull this up and begin to use it. Newbies on the planet will be clueless. That's the way of it. Now you're beginning to understand, old soul, why when you see an indigo child, you relate. You relate because you remember what you lost. You're starting to wake up. Now I just gave you biology. What about the spirituality? It's in there too. What if you had a better connection to your higher self? Remember when I said you could be in two places at the same time? I'm going to return to that. What do you think the higher self is? What's your definition of it? Every single human will have a different one. What does it mean? Some will say, well, it's higher. That means it's in the sky. We're always trying to touch it. We're not tall enough. This is the linear point of view. Now, if you've heard this message before, you will know higher is higher in vibration. Not above you or below you, but inside you, vibrating at a rate that's invisible, because it is multidimensional. That which vibrates so fast you cannot see it in another dimension resides in you, and that is called the higher self. It is in every single human being. It represents something you really have not analyzed well. It is the portal of your soul to the other side of the veil. Therefore, when you touch it, you touch me. Therefore, when you touch it, you touch the ancients that are you. You are on the other side of the veil helping yourself, dear one, and you're doing it through the portal of your higher self. Now, picture this for a moment. The majority of humanity walks around without this knowledge, without believing it, and if they were in this meeting, they would walk out rolling their eyes. I know this. Old souls have got a better chance because they remember the information. But the majority of humanity walks around with a full connection, intact, to the other side of the veil and have no concept of it. They walk in the dark, running into walls of their own creation. They create over a lifetime drama and suffering, war, hatred, reacting only with survival instincts and nothing else because they don't know anything else. And all the while, there's a beautiful angel called themselves with his hand out. Take it, take it, take it, take it. And they don't see it, they don't hear it, they don't understand it. Every once in a while, something happens to one of them. In a dark place, when a light is struck, you can see, if only temporarily, and sometimes the light is struck with a compassionate energy that takes that human being to zero. They have a death of a child, death of a loved one, it takes them to zero, and that is when they see it. And for the rest of their lives, they'll realize that that was the catalyst of their enlightenment, and they'll thank God for the gift. And I wouldn't have said that unless there was someone in the room who really needed to hear it. Aren't you tired of the sorrow, dear one? Isn't it time you saw it differently? This is the chance. Rewrite the engram, which says that you were born to suffer with this, because you weren't. You wouldn't be sitting in the chair without it, and you know what I'm talking about. I know who's here. Compassion is the key, always has been. There'll come a time when Spirit does not have to have that which is compassionate on the earth in the way of tsunamis and hundreds of thousands of people dying and tragedy and people leaping out of buildings and all of the things that brought you to your knees and changed the earth and the crystalline grid. There'll come a time when none of that is ever needed again. And it may take generations, but dear ones, this is where it's going. And the ones who sit in the chair right now are planting the seeds for that future. When compassion is something that is given from human to human, recognized for what it is, seen for its majesty and its glory, for the love of God, will be greatly enhanced because it will be more visible. And then the obvious will take place. The obvious. You can believe anything you want to, but doctrine will not then create separation. It'll create variety, not separation. Free to choose which way you wish to worship, which way you wish to participate in the gifts of God, but appreciating the other one and not judging them. What a day that'll be. And that comes with an enlightened human race. I have just given you the potential future of the planet. That's what's next. Will you see it in your lifetime? Oh, how do you define lifetime? Whenever I see you, you'll be in a lifetime. Do you understand? You're coming back. You're not going to miss the finale, are you really? If it's not in this lifetime, when you come back, dear ones, you'll awaken enlightened. Did you know that? Because you're not going to have to go through this again. You are not going to go through this again. You're going to come in, old soul, with a DNA that is different and conceptual, and you're going to remember, oh, not the specifics. You're going to remember what you don't want. That's new. It gets pretty good. And it's going to take a while. Meanwhile, now you know you are in the trenches of an old energy and a new energy, and we told you that 22 years ago. The bridge of swords is upon you. The bridge of swords is that bridge which you walk between the old energy and the new energy. The swords are those which are crossed above you in celebration, a marriage of the old and the new. Say goodbye to the duality as you've known it. Start to marry to that which you expect and know is there, to a degree where all of you will become eventually self-balancing. And what I mean by that is no matter how depressed you are, no matter how unhappy you are, no matter what's happened at work, all you have to do is wait a while. And it all balances back to the core. And you wake up and remember, I'm okay now. And you did it yourself. How do you like that? There have been those who say, Kryon, why do you love humanity so much? Number one, you see it as humanity. I see it as my family. Knowing who each of you are before you got here. Watching you give up your entire spiritual consciousness to come down in an energy like this and forget who you are. Now that takes courage. That's a word we understand. God understands courage. And then to walk around and hope you discover what it is you came for. And then to eventually find you in a place where you can listen to this and know why you're here. Let this be an awakening that will last for the rest of your lives. May this be the catalyst that turns the tide for the rest of all the incarnations of all the souls in the room, that you will remember and go through the bridge of an old to a new and start the process now. There's some who leave here and go, I don't know really what happened. And I'll say to you, congratulations, you're becoming multidimensional. The less you know, the more you're accomplishing. And that's what it's going to look like. Look for peace in your heart. Draw close to the core and look for the arms of God to love you no matter what's going on. And now you know you're getting results. You're not going to figure it out. Well, I don't know what to do next. How about celebrating? Don't you think Spirit would know that? Not in the dark, you know. We've told you this before. You sit down and you meditate or pray, and some human beings, the first thing they do is to say, oh, God, you have no idea what happened today. Let me tell you. There was this, and there was that, and there was this, and there was that. And here's what I need. And we're sitting there so patient. But we want to say to you, we were there, don't you remember? That's what we want you to do. Include us in every single way. Then you're starting to involve your higher self, that which is multidimensional, that which is God, in every single thought, in every single action, and everything you do. And that's when the intuition starts to spark, and that's when you start to get these thoughts. It's out of the realm of figuring it out. Now you're starting to place yourself in that which you call faith. Faith. Trust in the unseen, knowing that it is there. Start feeling it instead of intellectualizing it. Can you do that? That's what it's going to take. Then after you get results, then you can figure it out. Well, I wonder what happened. Some of you have had healings in the room. Have you figured it out? Or do you just celebrate it? Some of you have had miraculous healings in the room. What do you do with that? And I'll tell you what you do. You celebrate it. Thank you, God, that I got that. And you don't sit around and say, I got that, and I really need to know how it happened. So I would feel a lot better if you told me, the ABCs of this, and nobody's doing that. You're just so grateful. Let this metaphor be pasted upon you for peace in your life, for lack of drama, for things unseen, for the next step. When you can do something like that, thank you, God, that it is solved, and that I have peace, that I'm moving forward. And not, how did that happen? Then you'll have experience and practice it for the next one that you need, and the next one, and the next one. And someday you will awaken and say, I am multidimensional, because I'm comfortable with the process. I have no idea how it works. Then you can wear the badge proudly of the New Ager. Trust in the things you have no idea about, but that you know are real. This is what is happening. Normally we would close this meeting, and there would be the perception that Kryon has left the building. And that is not the truth. For we close it as we always did, the words will be the same. But the energy and the entourage are now upon the stage and in the chairs. Every time you enter the room, you'll know it. And so you'll leave this place quietly in reverence, because of the divinity that has visited you this day. When you arrive tomorrow, joyfully, you will start the teachings. There will be more channelings, more things to know, more puzzles to solve, and some to create. But that's the way you learn, is it not? And so this is what is before you. Some of you will sleep well tonight, others will not. For you are starting the process in the chair right now, and you have given intent for it. I know who is here, I know who is here. And you're ready, aren't you? And so pay no attention to the angels with a disco ball in your bedroom. For you're beginning to get answers. You are dearly loved by so many you don't know even exist, including the fairies. And so it is.